The AEC industry is rapidly changing, but your team doesn't have time to reinvent workflows for every new technology or client demand. ProjectWise, powered by iTwin, puts you in control and positions your firm for non-disruptive change. Whether you need to improve design quality, optimize existing processes, or even get started with digital delivery and digital twins, ProjectWise enables you to make the most of what you already have without starting over. Visit go.bentley.com/podcast to see how ProjectWise is empowering AEC firms to do more with less. Once again, that's go.bentley.com/podcast to learn more.
Welcome to Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. My name's Allison Schneider, and I'm your host today. I'm joined by Greg Kelly, President and CEO of STV, an engineering firm based in New York. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Allison, delighted to be here. Always fun to be with our colleagues at ACEC.
Let's dive right into it and talk about something that maybe is not getting enough attention but should. Future-proofing, planning for change. These are difficult topics when it comes to businesses that are well established. How are AEC firms future-proofing and planning for change? What are you seeing in the industry?
Well, you're absolutely right, Allison. There's so much change happening right now. And it was interesting, we were talking earlier about a pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic world. And I think by now it's well established that the pandemic accelerated a lot of trends that were already underway pre-pandemic because it showed us there's new ways to work. At STV, we're looking at future-proofing through a number of different lenses. The first we start with as a company, you have to establish who you are at this point in time and what is it that you do. And for us at STV, we went through an effort to define what our purpose is, to make communities better by connecting people, places, and the present to the future. But importantly, it had to be grounded in our values, integrity, partnership, and optimism. So that was part of our kind of our lead into developing a strategic plan. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing a lot of our colleagues across the AEC business do is establish a strategic plan. Because without that, I mean, you're not going to be relevant going forward. You have to establish where you are today and where you want to be in the future. So we see an acceleration of that occurring across the AEC space.
And I know you've helped ACEC with their strategic plan, the one that we have here. It's helpful to have that blueprint on paper. So as questions come up, you can look to the strategic plan and use that as a rubric for decision making rather than approaching each new option, each new opportunity without a plan. Well,
it's interesting you mentioned the ACEC strategic plan. I recall in the height of COVID talking with the team here, Linda and others, and they said, thankfully we had done the plan because it grounded us because we didn't know what was in front of us. And that's, the future, if you don't plan for it, can be very scary. And I think for ACEC, it was really helpful to have that roadmap to say, when we took the time and we took a good year and a half, sat back, soberly looked at where we were and where we were going, brought the right people around the table. When COVID hit, the plan was resilient enough. It took ACEC forward. And then member firms, it really helped tremendously. I think the same is true for individual firms. You really have to have that roadmap of where you're going.
It seems too like having that strategic plan could help compete. It seems too like having that strategic plan could help combat scope creep as that comes up, or deciding on new business lines. You can really evaluate them based on their merits as they relate to the strategic plan.
Yeah. We like to say at STV that a strategy is high level and directional. It's not precise. It doesn't tell you what we're going to do on Wednesday or Thursday or even next month. But it does say directionally, this is a line of business, this is a service, this is a geography, this is a market that we may want to operate in. So I think it's important to step back and use the plan, but it should be flexible enough. But you have to be disciplined enough in the execution of the plan. And I think here at ACEC, I think the leadership and the executive committee have done a great job with that.
How would you recommend a firm get started on a strategic plan if they've never done this before? What's step one?
Well, step one for us at STV is we got a third party to come in and hold a mirror up to us. I think there's There's a tendency to operate on anecdote. Well, we've always done it this way. And that's, I think, a lot of businesses struggle with that. We at STV, we brought in a third party that looked at our operation, interviewed clients, interviewed leadership, interviewed staff. And, if done well, you learn a lot. And some things you might not like. And that becomes a bit of the forcing function to say, all right, these are some areas where we need to strengthen an organization. These are areas where we perhaps need to invest more time and resources in. So I think it starts with a true assessment of where you're at as an organization. And then whether you develop the plan internally or with external resources, that's really, very subjective. You can, it's tailored. We did it at STV. We did it ourselves with a little bit of outside help, and we found that worked very well.
Did you have any challenges come up as you were going through your strategic plan?
I think you always have challenges. Specifically for us, I wouldn't call it a challenge, but it was the opportunity to engage employees. We had over 1,600 employee touch points when we did the plan, and it was fantastic. It was really helpful for us to, one, establish our purpose for why we exist. Again, connecting the present to the future and making communities better. But also it allowed us to step back and look at our values. And what was interesting, and I'll put this as the opportunity, is when we now have 4 generations in the workforce, and gathering all those different perspectives and what's important to them, that helped us recenter our values as an organization. So challenge, no; opportunity, yes. And that was really helpful to us to engage across all those generations. It was a very exciting time in the organization.
Well, that leads into my next question, which is about workforce. I think everyone we bring on the podcast has got to discuss this because it is the topic du jour. It's the top of mind topic for everybody in our industry. Can you talk a bit about how STV is approaching the workforce situation and the opportunities for diversification, equity, belonging, and creating an inviting environment for a firm?
Sure. Allison, I'll try to answer that in a couple different ways. It starts with, part of our strategy was it began with people. We look at STV to create that formative employee experience. And it was interesting, as we were going through the strategic planning process, I kept our board apprised along the way. And one of our external directors, as we're looking at big data, said, we may be at a point in time where employees don't spend their entire career with one company. And that's a generational change. I have 3 millennials and a Gen Z, but he actually calls himself a Zennial. And I've observed in them, there's a tendency to explore new things and chase and find new opportunities for their own growth. And so for us, there was a bit of an awakening in STV saying, well, maybe we need to look at the workforce differently. And rather than say somebody's going to come here and work 40 years, and they might, and we hope they do, if they work 4 years or 40 years, we want this to be the formative place they work. So we want to create an environment that has great mentorship, if they're coming right out of school or they're in an internship, that has great opportunity, great teamwork, great technical development of their skills, great leadership development. And if they choose to go do something else someday, that's okay. Maybe they'll go work for a competitor and they'll be a great partner to us, because partnership is one of our core values. Or maybe they become a client someday, and that's all right too. But you'll always be part of that STV alumni network. And that's the environment we're trying to create, where it's centered on the employees, and you can feel that you can have that personal and professional growth at STV. And we don't put a timeline on it. But importantly, as part of all that, and you asked about, inclusion and diversity, at STV in 2021, we formed our first DEIB council. And the council was made up of about 18 employees. And they did some great work for us. They looked at our HR policies, they looked at our training, and we went right back to the basics of how are we doing things? How are we interviewing people? How are we hiring? How are we promoting? And we looked at all those policies and practices we had in place, and they came back with a set of recommendations that we immediately implemented. We're now on to phase 2. That was a volunteer group. They've moved on, and we've got a new group that's been constituted for DEIB, and they're working on the next set of challenges for us. But our ultimate goal is for STV to be an inclusive employer and creating opportunities for all. It never ends. It's always a journey. It's recognizing that everybody starts someplace, and we're looking to move the organization through. And again, as a strategy, high level and directional, where everybody feels part of STV.
I think it's nice to have the workforce, to have your employees have a say in this, and to have an open dialogue, because then you're able to avoid some of the pitfalls that may come when people don't feel heard. And more than just avoiding the pitfalls, you're able to move the organization in a direction that can be much more positive and encouraging.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, part of it is setting the environment that you make people feel comfortable to be heard. And that's, our three core values: integrity, partnership, and optimism. The integrity is being honest in how we communicate. When you make a commitment, you deliver on it. If we say we're going to do something for employees, we have the integrity to deliver. But it's about partnership internally and partnership externally with our clients. And we'd like to talk about our clients, the communities we serve. And the last piece of our core values is around optimism. And it was interesting. This is the one that gets the most attention. When I talk to colleagues externally, they say, or even clients, they'll say, I love that optimism. And what do you mean by it? And for us, that optimism value is, we believe we've been all given a gift of training, technical training, whether we're engineering or planning or construction management. We've been given a gift to solve problems. And that gift allows us to make communities better. So we're optimistic we can make those communities better. And so that, for us, that's kind of what makes our feet want to hit the floor in the morning, that we can make the environment around us better. And because if you talk to engineers, and I've talked to colleagues across our space, what they get most excited about is pointing out the different infrastructure that they worked on. We worked on that bridge, we worked on that school, we worked on that hospital. And that's what gets people excited. That gives you optimism. And we help create that. And why not be optimistic that we can solve the problems? We like to say, when others say no, we say, well, wait a minute, let's take a look. I think we can solve this one.
I think that's a great point. I haven't heard it put that way before, where this idea of improvement and looking toward what's possible is actually optimism. And right. If we think about it that way, I think engineers are by nature optimists.
Right.
I also want to say that STV is the founder-level donor of the ACEC Research Institute, which has been putting out great data about our industry and is really the dedicated source for engineering firm data. Can you talk about why you thought it was important for STV to make that investment in the Research Institute?
Yeah. Well, firstly, it goes back to one of our core values around partnership. None of us in this space can do it alone. And ACEC provides that opportunity to partner with our colleagues out there. And we're super grateful for the other supporters for the Research Institute. But it allows us to partner to do the important research. And this came out of the strategic plan, the important research that's fact-based and can say, how do we make the business of engineering better? And so I think that's what the Research Institute is focused on. So for us, we all have choices to make. This was one that was really easy to get behind. Now, admittedly, there's a little home cooking here. It was something that did drop out of the strategic plan that you spoke about. But it's in the strategic plan for a reason. And we felt it was important to support that and to partner with our other colleagues across ACEC to make a difference.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. Greg Kelly, President and CEO of STV. My name is Allison Schneider, and this has been another installment of Engineering Influence.